Welcome to And It's Live, the podcast which dives deep into football's most iconic seasons, stories, and what ifs. If you love football, history, tactics, and nostalgia, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell, and drop us a like on YouTube so you don't miss an episode. Hello and welcome to And It's Live, the history of the Premier League, our final show on 1995-96, and how on earth are we going to squeeze all this into the one offering? Adam, how are we doing?
Yes, I'm good, thank you. This has been a really fun one. I'm looking forward to getting into this. I don't know how we're going to squeeze it in. We've got lots to talk about. Rude Hullet, Grey Shirt Gate, Keegan unravelling. It's all in here, but I'm looking forward to giving it a go.
We'll do our best. David Edgar is here as well. David, how are you? Positively tiggerish with excitement here.
I would be fibbing if I said this show wasn't one that, in the manner of a football supporter getting the fixtures at the start of the season, I hadn't ringed on the calendar. But what could be more fun than three middle-aged men getting together to discuss how things were better when they were younger, and it were all fields round here. But these were particularly great fields.
There's loads, obviously, to get through. We'll make that the meat in the sandwich, a bit of miscellany to start and maybe finish with. David, I'll go to you because you love a League Cup. Winners again, second time in 3 years against a Leeds, kind of Leeds side reaching very much the end of any great importance in that cycle. They'd come again at the start of the new millennium, of course. Villa won 3-0. It's the Savo Milosevic final, isn't it? Not quite as well remembered as the victory over United a couple of years before. Actually, maybe more of interest is the semi against Arsenal, two-legged as it still is. Arsenal 2-0 ahead at Highbury. Dennis Bergkamp with a couple of lovely goals. Dwight York scores possibly the worst goal of all time. I would urge anyone to find this out. You get kind of deep corners to the back post. This one possibly went 200 foot in the air before coming back down, and then it bounces around. Also, it just looks like it's on a string, and the players are little cats, and their owner is just kind of moving the ball out. No one can quite kind of get to it and get it under control, but Dwight York would, as before half-time, and he scores the equaliser. It'll be 0-0 at Villa Park, David. 3 goals, because that journey from Birmingham to London really is. Away goals would come into play. I think Nigel Winterburn hits the bar at Villa Park late on. Arsenal probably should have... is 2-0 up, see that two-legged affair. Would have made any difference to the Bruce Rioch thing that, of course, we'll touch on next week, really, because a shocking start to 97. Would that have made any difference if they'd won that Cup, given that they were a cup team anyway, Arsenal, both domestically and at home? It's not really making the difference, turning the dial, powers that be. I just wonder.
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating counterfactual, to be honest, Martyn, because it validates, if you like, the very modern term, but it validates the project. Bruce Rioch win a trophy. Now, there's no guarantee. Liverpool, of course, won the League Cup the previous season, and I think a lot of us felt this young team now have a trophy in the bag. They're going to go on and do something. It can act as a propellant. It's not automatic. It's not, we've won the League Cup, let's sit back and wait for the trophies to roll in. Have to then go and push on from it. But you're absolutely correct in what you're saying. Arsenal were a cup team in the early 90s, but they didn't want to be. They just were. Investment the previous summer is not an investment of a side who are satisfied being a cup team. That is an investment for the future. That's an investment that says we wish to be competing. We have to compete at the top of the table if we're putting this sort of money out, both on fees and wages. So would it have bought him more time? Not if they started the way they did the following season, obviously, because it was disastrous. But would they have started the following season if they had won this? I tend to think that when now we have the benefit of hindsight, and you read the memoirs of Arsenal players for that time, I think that it was a little bit like the iceberg analogy. We could only see the top of it. I think that the problems the players had with Rioch, with his style of manager, some people just aren't right for a particular club. Arsenal are a good club with its very much its own sense of what it should be, how it should look. And I'm not sure Rioch fully tapped into that. More importantly, Rioch sort of always gave the impression of almost resenting having to, I felt, that wasn't even willing publicly to go along with it. And that's not a fight a manager can win. If you have a a conservative football club. We one that's similar, that has its sense of itself, that's rooted in how they behave. It might all be nonsense, but if they believe on how behave and conduct themselves, and Rio sort of bristled under it, I felt at the time, character. And I think that I got the impression, Martyn, that he resented people saying, right, he has to prove himself now at Arsenal of the size of the club. I think he felt, I'm a very good manager and Arsenal are fortunate to have me, as opposed to me having to come in. And that wasn't true, but that was the impression that I had from him. And certainly his players he was not popular with. But a trophy, it acted as an accelerant. There were enough good players in that team to build from.
Absolutely.
And but I tend to think that there was a fundamental gap who he was and what you need to be successful at that football club.
We'll talk about it a lot more next week, because it was a pre-season, eve of season kind of story. But Adam, team that will finish bang on 10th at the end of this season, we talked a lot about, is Chelsea. Glenn had already, by the end of the season, obviously made it clear he was leaving. He was going to pick up the England after Euro 96, and that kind of weird. He was quite involved. He didn't up at the camp a couple of times as England were and season really kind of dominated, and what would follow, I suppose, is set in chain a set of events with rival and Ruud Gullit playing at sweeper. How did all this work, and what did it set up? Because I think quite a few English starting to go to that 3 soon.
Yeah, I find it's a libero, actually, Martyn.
It's okay.
Yeah, I remember the Panini sticker album. Everyone had goalkeeper, defender, midfielder, forward, and this year he was just libero, which, if you would sum up Gullit. Caveat, if you've not read Michael He's the Mixer, then it is necessary for that, because it is a brilliant breakdown of tactical evolution in the Premier League. A lot about the Ruud Gullit aspect and how changed, I guess, about players becoming their roles. And we spoke about this on the main event show with Makelele, and we spoke about Cantona and Bergkamp. This one doesn't quite become as widespread, I don't think, in terms of a libero. It's very much, there's a few of them who do it. But it's not something that becomes prevalent, really. He best friends with Frank Rijkaard growing up, which wasn't something I aware of in Holland. He was found by a Welsh ex-footballer, who was a manager over there, Barry Hughes, who coached. All of his coaching was he found him there, playing for a club, I think, in West Amsterdam. He was centre half. And he's playing up front or on the right wing. And then when he joined PSV, he moved this sweeper. I have to confess, being the 10-year-old Premier League advocate at the time in Serie A, at the time when he moved to Chelsea, I was expecting him to play in midfield. I think it was because that's where he made his name with Milan. Really good quote that said, "Yeah, but it's a rare moment of humility, shall we?" He's like, "Have you Milan defence?" At that time, I wasn't getting as a sweeper ahead of the Maldini. Desai was player, so you can kind of understand it. But he moved to Chelsea. He was open about it. He said, like, you love the league, didn't have a very good stadium. Okay, it's a nice part of London, but he moved because Glenn Hoddle was a manager. Basically, he would play for Glenn Hoddle. I guess it's something that, as Glenn Hoddle being ahead of my time, and obviously we spoke about him a couple of seasons ago, it's quite interesting to see that pool still there. With they want to come and play for Glenn Hoddle, even though he had only been a manager for a couple of years. So yeah, it was a bit of a homecoming in terms of him moving to Chelsea and going back to play as a sweeper. He said his skills as a sweeper, he preferred. It didn't all go to plan. I think it's fair to say, because he was winning the ball, or the centre half's winning the ball, giving him the ball. He was the one that was trying to control the tempo, start attacks. So he's playing those nice balls ahead of the fullback for the to run onto. No fullback in British football wanted balls like that they run onto. They wanted tackle a winger. They didn't want to build up play at all. So it was, could try this a little bit further forwards at times. I'm going to try this. So I think that was a big difference, obviously coming from Holland, first of all, where up and all that sort of stuff is really welcome. Perfect for him to be a sweeper. Maybe even in Serie A if he was playing for any other club other than Milan. So yeah, when he here, it was a bit of a clash of cultures. I think you see the muddy guys like Vinnie Jones try to challenge you in the middle of the park and all that sort of stuff. There was a few differences to work out. but he during that season, sweeper, midfielder, attacker, he sort of filled in everywhere. And there's a really good quote. It's a video article. I think it's an interview with Gullit actually a couple of years ago, and it's basically as a call Gavin Peacock at the end of a game, I think, and Gavin Peacock was coming to him and saying at that time was a midfielder and a pretty decent midfielder, coming to him and saying, how have you so much time in the ball? How are you always and he's like, I couldn't explain it to him. It was just you do how the ball comes to you, and if you have space, if you stay in a certain area, there's that thing as well. I'm not sure who it is that talks about it, but don't move and you'll have space as well, which is a kind of, if someone gets in the byline and they cut the ball back, Frank Lampard is arriving in the box when you think he's not actually arriving in the box, he's just going slower than the defenders because the defenders want to drop off. That's where the space is. So I guess that's a different of it. He's like, sometimes you move too much and they will distract you. If you don't move and make the opposition go first, you'll find some space. So all of those little micro examples are what made it so special. But yeah, he came in, he just totally changed opinion on what a sweeper was. Most of the time, if you're playing a back three, the sweeper was the guy in the middle who is most physical, can tackle, can head the ball further than anyone else. Maybe not the quickest, maybe not the best on the ball, but he changed. But like I said, it was ahead of its time, and maybe it took a bit for clubs to catch on. Defenders being ones that start attacks in the 90s in the Premier League.
David, he became a real hook for people to hang any kind of hopes that English was going to mature into something a wee bit more sophisticated than, blood and they'll know there on a rainy night kind of thing. He would be the first thing, and yes,
really well. He was famous at this point. He was a superstar. But that isn't to be that sort of flag bearer. You have to have a certain X factor. I wish there's a phrase in French that would cover, but just that extra. I mean, he's gel, isn't he? If you're an image maker, there's a big, athletic, handsome man with the really super cool dreadlocks, impeccable English. Well, I'm happy to do interviews, confident speaker, just an impressive man with an impressive list of achievements. And I think as well, for talking degrees of cool, he'd played for that AC Milan team and that Dutch team, both of whom were, everybody sides. So when he in England, it's a statement, because here is a, who is unarguably, no one can question the record, is coming to play in England. But also someone who's confident enough and good enough still to bring his style into the league. There's no talk of adaptation here. There's no talk about whether or not it's almost like, as peculiar as it sounds now, it was almost like English football will need to catch up to him, not the other way around. And you need to have one hell of an aura, really, to want to have that conversation, which he did. Yeah, the perfect man at the right time for a league that was looking to change how it was viewed and how it was marketed. And he's somebody that you're going to tune in to watch. Back then, I remember being so excited about the process of watching play there. And he was just a very elegant footballer. Adam made the point there about time on the ball in the frenetic hurly-burly of the Premier League, which at the time was still more recognisably closer to 80s football than 90s, although, as we've discussed, it was evolving. Here was a man who just had brought that calm, that authority, that certainty, and he his box office. And now every club now is starting to think, we could do with this, because interestingly enough, and this is I think interestingly, but that given previous explain it, but it's probably boring to most people, but Chelsea marketed the hell out of him. He was the centrepiece. When you went to the club shop, it was all Gullit stuff. When you looked at Chelsea at merchandise, it was all Gullit led. And other clubs are looking at this now, going, right, who's our guy? Who can we get for us? And a purist will say, well, it shouldn't be a consideration. I think on this show we've always tried to discuss the business, because the changes in the business side of football during this period, I think, are utterly fascinating, and we're still living with today. Other clubs are now looking at this and say, right, we need someone like that, but they also have to be quite good, because if you bring in someone who is a big name but is useless, fans are going to go off them pretty quickly. So Gullit, in many ways, becomes a template.
But Gullit manager, David, how many people were expecting that when you're, because again, as everything you said, I agree with. The critics at the time was, yeah, this is a retirement home for former legends. It was going to take a while before, and we came out, when we get into it, kind of pinpoint the real defining transfer that comes into the Premier League with a player coming from a better league, and they were at the time, at the previous career. Maybe Zola, maybe he's one, because even on camp, he struggled, and they were kind of licking their wounds, even though he was a World Cup winner. So he's not that football. Now he's going to be player manager, and that was exciting as well for next season, obviously.
Yeah, I'd never said I saw it coming, and I think most people who were at the time, if they said it looked the logical appointment for Chelsea, are fibbing. Even by this stage, though, Martyn, player managers are becoming quite passé. They sort of seemed, even at this stage, to me, to be a relic of a decade before. And increasingly, you just really didn't see it very often. I was shocked at Chelsea doing this. And Gullit being asked at the press conference, does this mean you're going to focus on the management? He's like, no, I'm just going to play. I've got a good team around me. It almost impossibly quaint, like, people the Maple and Merry Old England sort of thing. The idea that someone could be a player manager. Now, we would just laugh it out of court. There's too much to do. You can't come both. But even then, I think that idea was beginning to just generate. It's not the fall down shock it would be now, but it was still, I think, quite a surprise. And Chelsea spoke about seeing something in him, that they had actually envisioned that this might be a possibility when they had brought him in the first place. He was keen to go into it. For all I've just said about them there with the image and stuff and the type of player that he was, I have to admit that because of all that, I didn't see him as a manager. He'd never struck me as that. That's sort of whatever biases I've picked up on my part over the years watching football. But at the time, I was sort of like, I get this, because I think he had those skills. I'm always a little wary of fantastic ex-players becoming managers, because a lot of the time what they do is a natural. And how do you explain it to someone? I think Wayne Rooney's a great case in point. Wayne Rooney worked very hard throughout his career, and he can definitely get that across to footballers. But the special gifts that made him what he was, how do you explain that to someone? And do you frustrated when they can't do it? Things that come naturally to you, do you annoyed by that? So I was very surprised. Although at the time, if there was a club that was going to do it, Chelsea probably were it. Yeah. They did seem very go ahead and dynamic, and they did say risk taking. Probably they wouldn't mind doing that. And I think that if I'd done this, I'd have fallen down off my chair, shocked. If Liverpool done something like this, but Chelsea, you could kind of see, because with hindsight now, we view Chelsea for what they are, what they became. They are not that in 95, 96. They're a quite exciting, fun club,
quite
bit
cool.
of glamour, that are quite cool, that everybody quite likes, who play in London, who've had great players over the years, very fashionable, not this behemoth that they are in the 21st century.
What's that quote, isn't it, about those who do teach? And I think it's probably quite applicable here. That little Gavin Peacock was quite enlightening for me as well, because it's someone coming and saying, how do you find the space? Don't know, I just do it. So it's like you can sort of see the writing on the wall. I think that's a big part of maybe why he wasn't a good manager and why he's dropping down a level, if you like, to Newcastle. He does so, it's nothing longer term. So yeah, and as well, I was going to ask what you guys thought about that, because it sort of makes perfect sense to me. In 96, that's peak of Rule Britannia. Let's bring in the season we've got Gullit in. He's glitz and glamour. He's living in round the Ritz and King's Road. Chelsea are, to me, when I started following round about this time, Gullit coming in, Zola, Kazaragi, Leboeuf, they are pretty fashionable and pretty modern. Does it more sense now, given what was happening in the country at that time and the sort of blitzing, like you've said?
I do have to pick you up though, Adam. 1996 was the height of cool Britannia, not Rule Britannia. That was probably the early 19th century.
Yeah, bigger. I think I mentioned that it could have Chelsea. They would be prepared to, and not just prepared, they would be absolutely seduced by that plan and those kind of signings, and so
it's kind of British, isn't he? Let's try this for a couple of years. Someone who's a bit more glamorous because Hoddle, because he's played. Let's go full in on
We live in a country obviously where people follow the Premier League, but obviously we're in football. You saw a lot of Chelsea shirts at this point. not commensurate with their success. It wasn't people jumping on the bandwagon. It's just they were quite cool. And this era, Martyn, you'll remember football shirts were cool. You could wear football shirts to concerts.
I was going to say there are a lot out there, which I think is
anyone.
Yeah,
at this point. Yeah, I mean, one of those. But popular Chelsea, people like, and the other thing about that is it means that people kind of wanted to succeed, whereas if another club had done it, you'd maybe been hoping to see it fail. But people liked Gullit, they quite liked Chelsea. This must have staggered to someone who's only really known Chelsea this century. But yeah, they wouldn't say they were everybody's other team, but they were somebody you quite liked.
I think exactly it. The football thing is absolutely correct. That is a fashionable choice and now reserved for five-a-sides, but then absolutely just putting about the pub. Or Manchester City be the kind of indie top, Chelsea the more kind of fun London pop top. United, I guess, have always had their following, and Newcastle the romantics, which went to. But yeah, the comparisons with Waddle are interesting, Adam. A fantastic tactical coach, but another one who found it difficult to maybe teach various bits and pieces. Such a natural player. But yeah, those who teach PE, as someone once said. We'll take a break there and we'll get into the real story of 95-96. Pick up championship title race then, gentlemen. 3 teams involved when we left at last. Newcastle United's kind of final time to absolutely seal the deal by beating Madrid at St James's Park. They did everything at the start of March, couldn't, and one man was the deciding fan that night, and he would be again, Adam. That of course is Cantona. A 1-0 win there, he scores. There's hope for Newcastle United to QPR or 1-0 down. Relegation threatens QPR. They will be relegated, QPR. Cantona popping up at that back post on the right-hand side. How often is happening? A beautiful ball by Giggs. I mean, it's almost kind of indefendable. And to get a great equaliser. Then they play Arsenal, Adam, at Old Trafford. He scores an absolute belter of a goal again, I think, in the second half. 1-0 win. There's a 1 win against Spurs, where it's just his sheer presence, really, in terms of picking the ball up in midfield. Spurs should have had a corner, by the way, that it comes from that. And Spender's they just seem to give him all the space as he runs it in. He seems to be on a mission to win this goal by himself.
Yeah, and I don't think you can really argue with it. He got the Sports Writers Player of the Year, didn't he, this year?
Yeah, he did.
And obviously a lot of controversy around that, given how much and a lot of controversy, I guess, on rewarding his behaviour. But you just need to look at some of those games. There's how many games United win in this run by the odd goal up until it's effectively too late. With that Hampton we'll come on to. They're grinding games. Bolton Wanderers aside, there's not many in February, March, April that they win by more than a goal. Lots and lots of clean sheets, and I think it speaks to how both managers were coming across at this time as well. For me, outwardly, Ferguson is calm, downplays United's peaks, sort of we've been here for type mantras in a kind of subtle and not so subtle way sometimes to say we're experienced, you're not, and they've got to know. There's a real interesting point where Ferguson, I don't want to say the mask slip, but we're coming to it in a little apologies if you're going to mention it then. But after the Leeds game, when Roy Keane, I hadn't had it at the time, but he comes out and says something like, "I can't believe Leeds aren't in the top 6."
We'll come to it. This is all part of the fight. Don't worry. And I don't think a mask clipping at all. I think he's absolutely
very deliberate. He's winded up 2 people with that one. That great line.
I was going to say it's a multi. But yeah, I think it's how calm and calculated he was. And then on the other side of the fence, you've got Keegan talking about he really into the plucky underdog thing, but a little bit too much. That then when they're getting criticism, it's like how dare you me? We're under. I think all about calm, composure, and 1-0, solid defensive play, and it's all about Cantona in that run.
We'll get to more words in a moment. Linked to that, David, go back to that Arsenal game. It's a midweek game at Old Trafford. Newcastle go to Highbury on the Saturday. Kevin Keegan is there, as you would expect, to watch his next opponents. He is doing the halftime draw on the Old Trafford pitch. Someone's just obviously asked him, and he can't say no. He wants to be everybody's affable friend. I cannot, in any circumstances, that particular juncture of a season where things are really hotting up, really tight, where Alex Ferguson would be on the pitch at St James's Park, pulling a raffle, a game he was there to, cast in another team, not in Newcastle. I mean, it is inconceivable and sets up what we're ultimately going to talk about in 10 minutes.
It's actually quite sweet in a way that this is definitely a bygone era. Can you imagine anybody involved now wanting this? Right? Would the club ask an opposition manager to do it? No. Would the home fans politely applaud him? No. Especially when you're going for a title with. Would the manager do it? No. It's just does seem from another era. This does seem absolutely incredible to modern. What a coat, by the way, that thing he's got on. I mean, you could, with that coat, there's a lot of it. But yeah, it's as you say, he's just not that type of guy. A nice man, comes a heart in the sleeve, is putting it mildly. During this period, could you catch me in my big winter coat and my walking boots? There's a hill over there that I'm prepared to go and die upon, which is that Eric Cantona doesn't get enough praise this period, and that may seem a little odd for a Manchester United player and one who's been spoken and written about so much as Eric Cantona, but because the Cantona image and mythology can overshadow the Cantona player mythology or facts at times, because the United story from this era, Ferguson, the cast of characters, and because of the class of '92, the Keegan meltdown, Euro '96, all of that, people ignore the fact that for 3 months, Eric Cantona pretty much single-handedly is bringing points into Manchester United. That is a fact. And I don't think out with the club itself, he gets enough credit for that.
Oh, that's I think he's the hero this season, rightly so. He takes a while to get up to speed, as you would after that initial game against Liverpool, when everything is absolutely, get goals. They all get goals in that autumn period. But what they can't do is keep children out of close. I mean, and as Ferguson said after that West Ham game at the end of January, we got defenders back. Now, someone's still to step up, and he absolutely does. But the reason he won that was because they stopped being like Newcastle and could actually see out big, important, which they all are at the other end of the season.
How many point-winning goals does he score in that run? I mean, it's unless the defence can see it out. What I mean this is, by the way, not that he didn't get praise at the time he did. He was this behemoth. It was a great redemption story. I mean, I just popular imagination since when people look back on this season, there are so many things vying for attention that this particular contribution, I think, gets slightly overlooked by Eric Cantona. You will not hear discussion of this. You will hear discussion of his cup final goal. Occasionally, but you not hear discussion about this. But he was just vitally important, and I'm glad highlighted. I was actually taken aback. That's maybe really dramatic for you. I was slightly surprised by how many goals he got in that channel that you mentioned. He was constantly drifting in there.
Why no one's picking him up?
No one spotted the 6'4" Frenchman with a collar up, but he did it time after time.
Yeah, there's a lot going on this season. It's why we were so excited to do it, and I think we're bad for that. I think because we've got bandwidth for simple stories as time goes on, right? But it's why we do shows like this to detail a wee bit. But at a team game, it's not about one person. He was delivering the goods at the back, but they were just like Newcastle, so that stopped. And if you can marry those up, and Keane's duties as well, and Butt, by the way, providing far more platform. It's more the point that Cole is not yet firing, and therefore that's some of the joke came from. Why does he wear his collar up? Because he's been carrying Cole all season. He really is man in the myth. They're often inseparable here. I go back to that Spurs goal. He picks that ball up just inside the Spurs half, I think. I mean, it's fun. He instantly controls it with the chest, I think, and all of a sudden he seems 15 foot tall, and Spurs players just disappear. A wee bit comparable to Gullit against Aberdeen in this just a few weeks later. But they're just terrified of the thing. They're terrified of the presence and what's going to happen. Talked about it in penalties last season, where keepers just seem absolutely paralysed by this guy who just rolls it into the net. They're not particularly fixed, but no.
But you're absolutely correct. Yeah. It's that he and look, he this Man United team we have discussed so often on this show, because there was this Spurs goal is a great example, Martyn, of something that literally no other player in the Premier League could do. That's not only a praise of Eric. What I mean by that is another player would probably receive more tackles during that, but the respect for this guy and the fear factor for what he can do is he's so good in this. Well, all right then, why don't we compromise? The cup final is a perfect microcosm of what you're saying, which is that they keep clean sheet and look very solid, and what I'm saying, which is Eric Cantona comes up with a moment of genius to win it. We're both right.
We could do a show in that cup final as well. Newcastle, Adam, here things get forgotten about in a season of things forgotten about, as David said. We finished last week's show with that defeat at home to Manchester United. And again, popular mythology, this is the game that won it. Following weekend, Manchester United have that draw at Loftus Road. Newcastle then play West Ham on the Monday Night Football, I think. And it's 3-0. It could be 10. Asprilla is absolutely outstanding. And they're back to being 3 points ahead with a game in hand. So possibly 6 again. It's all pretty much that you're back in their favour. I think it's a weekend that gets for this narrative quite a wee bit. The problem is it's a way that will kill them. They can't win in London. They go to Arsenal, win 2-0. Again, could have been a lot more. And that's when you really start to kick off. Obviously beating Arsenal before they beat Spurs on that same weekend. Then is the midweek of the 3rd of April, whatever it is, where they go to Anfield. People think this is a Monday night football game for some reason.
Yeah, I thought that too.
The following season's a Monday night football game. This is a Wednesday evening. I mean, sensational. I mean, where do you like everything that's so exciting about this period in 190 minutes?
Yeah, I think everything that's exciting about the period, it probably sums up where Liverpool are, and for better or worse, it sums up where Newcastle are as well. I don't think you can really underestimate. Yes, it's a draw with Queen's Park that United get, but Cantona again, stoppage time, and a point back at this stage as fatal as a loss would be. And it's just another little chip away that they played terribly, but they still can't get beat. That's them. I think that would their first defeat Spurs on New Year's Day, I think it was, United. So it's just one of those things that Newcastle start to think, what's going on? So but I think this game's killed them also, don't they? Newcastle, Arsenal and Liverpool, particularly a way that this one transpires. But it sort of sums them up. It's everything that you hate, I guess, Martyn. It's free flowing attacking football, defending optional. But there's certainly a naivety here as well, I would say, from Newcastle, particularly when take the lead in this game. To not even draw, and okay, they're a whisker away from getting a draw, and these type of games happen, but they're just off the back of a 3 each a few weeks or a month before that, where again they're coming back in that game, and then they think they've got the winner, and then they get pegged back, and then they get the winner. They think they've got the winner, they get pegged back. So it's just pinball stuff. Isn't going to win you titles, I guess, up against a team like you said that were struggling defensively, but have got all of the fact looking really solid, less chaotic, less adventurous, more experienced over the piece. You simply can't be allowing of goals that they're allowing in and expect to still be. So great game for the neutral. I absolutely loved it. It's probably one of the sticks with me. From earliest, if that makes sense. I think I was 9 at this time. It's a game I'm watching vividly in front of the TV. But yeah, I think it's pinball. And it's not there, and you want to win. Obviously you want to win, but you want to win in a way that shows your. I guess you want to go there and you want to grind something out. If it's a 3-2 victory, great. Even a 3 each there, you're thinking, okay, we came back with a difficult game against Arsenal a few days before, but to lose it. Late on to that Ollimore goal, and gets the final nail off, isn't it?
Davey, people don't need a game. I'm sure most people listening to this could probably just bring it up in their mind. In minutes we get a goal, and it's Robbie Fowler. Of course, it has to be before Ferdinand and Ginola at Newcastle back in. Bit of The action that Adam has mentioned, but Fowler, I think he's very close. I think McManaman goes very close, but Fowler eventually equalises again before Asprilla scored. I mean, it's 2 minutes later. Asprilla scores that goal outside of the right foot, spins almost back on the same trajectory as David James was on. I mean, it's such a big goal. Collingwood comes in at the back left post instead of the back right hand post, and then it's a bit punch-drunk, understandably so, that last 20 minutes or so. Les Ferdinand has a chance, Davy. A sitter, but it's a chance, and David James does very well to smother it. Then moment close to the stoppage time, where Collingwood absolutely unleashes it, does not fuck about like Ferdinand did, absolutely twice. And a nice little throw that Barnes and Rush are knocking the ball to one another a few times before passing it to what was supposed to be the future. Keegan, who is wearing his big coat, but also is wearing this very fetching wine-coloured dinner jacket thing, sports blazer, and he's just slumped over the advertising board. The Anfield pitch, it's a bit ramshackle. A Premier League is not quite there yet in terms of looking the absolute part, but it's matches like this ultimately that will make it look the part and attract all the interest and all the money and all the eyeballs.
Well, this match is immortal. It gets referenced every single season and will do forever. It became the standard bearer for what the Premier League said it was, what it wanted to be, what it claimed to be. And it has never let go of that position. When any classic matches are discussed, it will come up. As I say, whenever Liverpool or Newcastle come up against each other, it will be, I mean, I literally know Liverpool Newcastle game that neckens into it. The commentator said we hope for another 4-3. It probably is because it's been chosen to be the definitive game and marketed and pushed as the definitive game of the Premier League and what it represents. However, in the case of this, we're just discussing it from a league point of view. It's ridiculously open for a side going for the title. Let's not get away from that. It's thoroughly exciting. Liverpool are a good side, you know. Let's not forget Newcastle simply not doing their job because they're up. It's a very good side. Ferdinand scores that goal at the start of the season, doesn't he? He puts that one in probably before Christmas. He puts that one in, but then, as we know, he had a season very much of two halves. I think the image, though, we can read too much to moments. We can, but with what we know now, I think it only confirms what we suspected then, which was this is coming apart. It felt like it was coming apart. And this is, I think, why Keegan, this inbuilt glass ceiling, in that he's a heart on the sleeve guy, as I've mentioned. He's very emotional. And he uses that emotion in a positive way. He galvanizes that region, that city, never mind that football club. He galvanizes it. And it's exciting and it's everyone's in on it. Whole buy-in is total and momentum is going. But the other side of that is when things aren't going well, when you need that calm, that authority, he doesn't have it. He can't produce it. It isn't there within him to do that. He is 100%, and he runs on feelings. He reacts to how he is feeling, and therefore the mood ended. And I do believe, rightly or wrongly, that teams will struggle to be different to the image of the manager. I think if you've got a manager who's calm, I think it's easier for the players to be calm. Even if a manager is internally going through the motions, if he can project an air of calm, I think it's reflected in his team. Equally, I think when managers are visibly distraught and losing the plot. And by the way, it is just that image. It's beamed all over the world. It's really famous, but it was really famous within 24 hours, even in those kind of pre-social media days. What does it say to your team? What does it say to your support? What does it say to your rivals? Rivals who do feed on stuff like this. This is United. They do notice stuff like this. They do feed off of it. And as I say, I just think that this is. I think Keegan almost Martyn. I really do.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, he has that, which is his quality. It is also his thing will ultimately let him down. His strength is his ultimate weakness. There's something, I think, almost if you're not a Newcastle fan. And unfortunately for him, his rival has recognised it and is aware of that flaw and is capitalise on it. But I do think you and I, especially because we were about for this, try to reflect on it. I watched that game in the pub as a young social gadabout oyster at the time. I watched that game in the pub and rapped like people watching a movie. The whole part, Wimbledon, following the ball, heads moving simultaneously on the big screen, watching it, just fully wrapped. And then after the game, almost a sort of stunned silence of what have we just watched. It was tremendous, terrific. But yeah, that image, I think, said more than Keegan would have realised at the time.
There's a funny contrast with Martyn Gullit. We spoke about Gullit like a great player. Keegan did not manage like a great player. He was the exact opposite, as far as I'm concerned. Full of anxiety. It wasn't I was a great, just do what I say, or can you do what I say? It was very flipped around, and he was the opposite of Gullit in terms of personality, certainly from what we know and as managers. So it's funny how that doesn't always translate. It's just on the person.
Yeah, and the thing was the Gullit comparison, Adam. Keegan wasn't a naturally gifted player the way that Gullit was. No. Keegan worked his arse off for his career, and therefore aware of the players who don't things come in quite so easy. And Gullit is basically the opposite.
He was a vibes guy, and recently actually on to the day I saw Shane Given, and he's out. Rather ill-fated second spell at Newcastle. He said, I had a really old keeper's jersey that season. And he said, Keegan walked in, said to me, not sure about that. He says, and I laughed, but I'll tell you what, I'm sure about the guy that's wearing it. And Given said, I felt like all and, ready to go out and do everything for it. We are entering an era where this is not quite enough anymore. No. This is why this is so useful on the show.
I exist.
Because unfortunately, we are entering a period, and even 10 years before, Martyn, if you signed good players, set them up in a fairly basic style, Everton, 4-4, where you've got a right side, a proper left winger, and you've got Rampage. If you had players, set them up, and got a tailwind behind you, you could go and win a title. Yeah. This is the end of that, because Newcastle have done all of that. They've bought, they've set up, they've had them, it's pushed them right up. And then it stops. And I think from then on in, it's never, ever back.
Nothing's changed. Adam's mentioned it a few times. Managers, what they say internally, what they say externally, their demeanour. Players will know if a manager's stressing out. If a manager, therefore, doesn't believe in what he has. Because there's no point in stressing out if you do. If your players trust the play, everything fits together. So all of that is so important. Keegan, just could do it. He got their act together, because there is another narrative here where you don't get the back, or Cantona has that initial burst after coming back, but it all catches up. Still not big, by the way, and Newcastle just got over, and they're romanticised beyond all belief because they're the ones left holding the silver. And we've only got Spain in mind for one story, and that's written obviously by the owners. And Keegan at the end says, "We won't change." Absolutely adamant. We've bought the players to play the way we do, and that's just not going to change. So we'll see what happens with that change after the break. Right, how could we possibly follow that? The interesting thing, Liverpool don't, because Liverpool are now in the race here after this win. They go to Coventry, they batter them 0-0. David James makes a howler, and Coventry win, and that's them. They are done their weekend. And John Barnes reflects quite a lot on that particular Liverpool team, and he just knew those players were just a bit weak in certain games when it mattered. I do wonder if goalkeeper is maybe one of the ones he had in mind. So Liverpool are out. Wonder if that Easter weekend possibly does damage and sets up. This is how crazy these kind of fixture at the time. Newcastle beat QPR home. They're 1-0 down. Ian Holloway, of all people, topical that is, put QPR ahead. Get that he's a Premier League player once upon a time. But Newcastle, a couple of late goals from Peter Beardsley, one of them very, very nice in the win. Manchester United also win, of course. This is the derby against City. They're ahead, they're ahead. They're pulling Giggs, who's the winner in this one. Again, I could easily go silly ways. United hold on. Then the Easter Monday, United play Coventry. So playing on the Saturday, adding on the Monday. That's how it used to be, kids.
Yes. The best match of the day of the season were the Saturday, Monday at Easter. They were the ones you want to miss.
Coventry City at home, Cantona obviously with the goal and a 1-0 win. Game David more remembered for an injury to David Bust. I mean, I can still now, and I can still see players going up to see if he was all right, and then suddenly being shaken by that horrific, and he did that game.
Yeah, if you haven't seen that, go and look it up. It's not. I mean, we've all seen football, but this remains the definitive. This one actually is the only one I can genuinely say I had to go and get a glass of water, and just when I saw images, horrible career-ending injury, and oh my god! And you're right. After that, the whole you've seen a guy with his leg in two pieces. It's kind of hard to get back up for it. I think for players.
Adam, Newcastle played at night on Easter Monday at Blackburn Rovers, the champions. It should be noted, although poor defence of that title. Tight game. It's to go less than 15 minutes to go. David Batty scores. How ironic, given the opposition. Look, Adam, here's Newcastle United just grinding something out for once. Really tricky evening, difficult away game. They've stuck in there, and of course they concede goals in the last 4 minutes. 2 goals in 3 minutes. Graham Fenton, of my career, a Newcastle boy, I think. Shearer assisted him twice. Another Newcastle boy. Space they got. This is just nails. I don't care any if there's any technical or tactical explanation for a lot of this. They've done well for so long. They've got their lead. They're still in control here. And when they see that clock ticking past 85 in touching distance, and they just can't do it.
No, they can't, and I think it's just everything we spoke about. It's the same as the Liverpool game. Graham Fenton, I remember from Mirren, I'm sure, maybe quite a few years to this. Yeah, it's just nerve. I think it's an unlikely goal, I have to say as well. I don't know if I'd be putting my money on him popping up with 2 goals. But nerves, like everything you've said there, clock ticking down. We're going to get this win. That'll be us. But back on row. 2 hard-fought wins in a row, potentially. And yeah, it just kind of naivety. It's nerves. It's I agree with you. I don't think it is really about tactics at this point. It's something a lot deeper. A lot is just panic. And just basically that to try and get through this on vibes alone, we're going to score more goals than the opposition. When that dries up, we do not have the minerals basically to defend a 1-0 going into the last 5 of the games. That's where they're at.
Yeah. Yet, Adam, it's over. Incredibly. Yet another reprieve. They beat Hill at home on the Sunday, 1-0. The day after, Manchester United go to Southampton and lose 3-1. Grey shirts. Ferguson blames that for the performance and the result. And all of a sudden, much in the balance. Newcastle are 3 behind with a game in hand. The goal difference is tight. Manchester United have 2 goal difference there. But again, the remainings will said the popular narrative is, it ended here, it ended there. Now, there's an inevitability about how this concludes, but the league arithmetic doesn't.
No, it doesn't. And you look at these margins that we've spoken about here, it's easy to just a steady descent, and it probably is. Cantona popping up with that injury time goal at Queen's Park we spoke about, Collymore popping up with the injury time Liverpool game, and then Graham. It's if those 3 games had finished on 85 minutes, for example, then Newcastle look 6 or 7 points. My maths isn't great on that. 6 or 7 points more, and United probably having 1 less. I'm sure they'd have found a way. For example, if they'd have managed to beat Blunt when the Southampton result still happened for Man United, I don't know if Newcastle are going and winning those next 3 games that they've got coming up. I think they would have found another way probably to throw it away, but it's so fun. You think about how these things work, and like you said, the turning point or decisive moment, it can often be your eyes deceiving you. But yeah, I think this was the last outing for the Greys, isn't it? It was consigned to the bin with definitely no victories, but I'm not sure how many.
You didn't really hear it again after what they'd said with it, and I always find it interesting how so many, but not all of that squad, once they lock 4 step in behind Ferguson, or deviate from it. So, for instance, on this issue, Roy Keane has been asked, was it the kits? He's like, no, we were just rubbish. It was just, the manager. given a changing the narrative. But when you hear Neville or Scholes, etc., talk about it, they go, yeah, we couldn't see each other. I think they believe back then, if Ferguson told them you could each other in that kit, then it goes into the head and they believe that it's true. But
it's also quite believable. It's also quite, because I don't imagine that, even now, but certainly at that time, I don't imagine that was a key test criteria. Can we see each other in this kit? I don't imagine the woman sitting going, can we? So it's
Adam, go back to another point, because England play in a grey kit that summer. The only reason England were playing in a grey kit that summer is because it marketed perfectly to guys wearing it with jeans.
That was exactly the selling point. Yeah. Same with the United one. These were designed not with sport at all in mind. They were designed because they look good with jeans. Crazy. Whereas now, of course, modern, certainly away kits, they're designed with the blind people, people who don't realise how ugly they are. But yeah, I find that whole thing fascinating. But Fergie was good at it. Do you remember the time United drew and he complained that Van Persie could have been killed by someone? It's so good. Nobody after the game is even now. United got cuffed at a match they should not have been, and they got battered that first half. I mean, it's 3 down at half time. They got talking about now.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, midweek games. Newcastle 1-0 time at home to Southampton. A Rob Lee goal early on. The site United are huffing and puffing away at Old Trafford against Leeds United. They have been really, really stout, strong, and eventually deadlock is broken by Martyn with just under 20 minutes to go. That's where Ferguson starts to light the blue touch paper, and Leeds have cheated their manager. I don't know why if they play like that every week. It seems like getting a point of man and winning the title is more important than winning. You wait and see. They've got to play new. And what's forgotten about here again has compressed. The popular memory is that Newcastle play like the next night, and Keegan's like, this thing. It's not. It's ages. An international break in between here. It's ages before Newcastle play again. So those matches played on the 17th of April, and Newcastle go to on the 29th of April. So Keegan is stewing in this thing. Pre-match pressures, all those kind of things, not quite the same as they are now. It's who isn't, blah, blah, blah. So Keegan is stewing. United, the day before, it's the Sun, play host to Nottingham Forest, and for the first time really go big. They win 5-0. They're brilliant.
Yeah. And
that makes a difference because goal difference is now out of the equation. Newcastle do another 1-0 job. They have to huff and puff. They get the job done on the nights. Keith Gillespie who gets another goal. Yeah, weirdly, Adam, they seem to hold on to that. Okay. And then that brings us into the season and Newcastle's game in hand, which has been a game in hand for like 4 months. And it's away to Nottingham Forest, who have just been battered. Who are done. Their season's over. Thank you very much. On the seaside for us. And I mean, it could have into they could have gone at least on points with going into that last game. But again, goal difference not really going their way, obviously. And they go up, Peter Beasley's lovely goal. Again, Adam, they can't. And it's a mistake. I mean, it is a possession to Ian Woan, but it's still even been the Nottingham Forest half. But Ian Woan has got all this space because Batty's not there to basically just drive at the Newcastle defence. And he drives the ball in it. And now they need United to lose, basically, now, don't they?
Yeah.
For all intents and purposes. But yeah, of course, the context for that's a short space, right? That Monday night, the Thursday, the game at the Keegan does his exploding. And I mean, everyone, I don't need to repeat it. I can't say that about guys like Stuart Pearce and Leeds and send them a test game and all the rest of it. And Richard Keys, to be fair, says it's not just part of the psychology. And he says, no, it's way, it's beneath us. And so moral about it. These are so fascinating because Keegan's lost his shit there after the kind of previous game. They maybe drop points. He says if we can't win it, be runners up because we've not been runners up for a long time. He's kind of all over the place. But Davey, there's another one early in the season. Ron Atkinson's in big trouble at Coventry City, and Richard Keys says, "Look, what are you going to do here? Because you do this, the momentum's not good." It's a fair question. It wasn't. And Ron Atkinson loses his shit. This is when Richard Keys and Andy Gray are in the studio, and they've got the cans on, and he goes mental. Like, you lot playing with your silly and whatever else. Basically, you've never have. How dare you question me? But it looks as if he's going to batter the boy behind the. So it's so in keeping at this time, and where TV is, and where kind of older school managers are. And there's only one guy that's playing it well who knows his lines, and his is scripted, and theirs not.
Some of the viewers won't know this, but fortunately enough, we do press in Scotland at our club. We will be press conference. Football managers hate being questioned by people who are not in football. It's that simple. And by the way, they don't consider journalists either to be in football. Football people being questioned on anything by who they consider to be non-experts. And I can understand that, but equally, I have never made an album and I still know Coldplay are shite. So it is that age-old, there is a large group of people that think if you have never played this game at this level, you have no right to question me. Equally, they know that nowadays they cannot say that because the reaction will be swift and brutal. And it's so interesting that you brought up two of these events happening in the same season, because now Kevin Keegan's rant has ensured that forever they cannot do it, because if they do it, then they will be accused correctly of being under pressure and not handling it. So it's better to just give bland answers, which is what they do now in press conferences. Stuff like this now would never happen unless it is someone like the aforementioned Ian Holloway, who I think is performative and does it because he enjoys the notoriety it gives him. Most managers will just sit there and they will give you the same answers delivered in the same fashion. Now, privately, once the press conference is over, they may call you nasty words and have a dig at you. But managers do not want to be accused of doing what Keegan did here, which is very much, and what Atkinson was doing, which is you're under pressure and you are losing your focus and you're being annoyed by things that shouldn't annoy you. You're absolutely right, and I think it's important to mention the Keegan breakdown, for it is a breakdown. It's the breakdown of Newcastle project. It never became this, let's be honest. It looks as though it might in that following season, but it is now fundamentally hold below the waterline. And this, I think, it had been coming, but this is the moment that I think confirms it. He has been sitting with this for a month. So straight away, you cannot then, Ferguson home with a glass of red, pissing himself laughing because it worked. I've got him. I know I've got him. And now his players and my players and the wider world know I've got him. And he's cracked. I've won. And I'm sure that Ferguson went into the United dressing room the next day and said, we've got these. They're done. We've baked them. And it's an extraordinary... Now, what Ferguson said is annoying, right? And it is classless. And it is also derogatory, yeah, and in football's do this. We know that, right? We all understand that. That's why it's noteworthy. But it worked. The way you respond to someone who is trying to get you to bite is by not biting and not giving them anything. And of course, Keegan's incapable of that. As you say, Martyn, you would think that distance from it might actually lead to it, but he clearly bottles it up and then it explodes, as stuff like this tends to do.
It does.
And the line, as you say, well, we may making that. It's a white flag.
It's kind of done. I mean, again, bring it to her a brief second. In the run-up to Rangers game against Aberdeen, where Gascoigne scores a hat-trick, Rangers win the title, Richard Gough had done exactly the same thing. Off the back of Ferguson's comments about Leeds, that Aberdeen always raise their game Rangers, never do against anyone else. They should be, ashamed of themselves about where they are. And quite clearly this is going to become a thing. Adam, very quickly, because we really don't have a lot more time, I think I'm right in saying you feel mind games and the media wars are well overplayed, even though right now it could be fairly crystallised as being a big factor in how those managed in the final weeks of the season.
Yeah, I think overall, but I think it's really quite apparent in this one. I don't think Ferguson said anything bored. Certainly the Leeds one, I don't think the rivalry there, for sure, and it is really something to the Gough comments. Maybe the Stuart Pearce is a bit much because that's the about his testimonial, and because they're sent team there, that means they're going to lie down to Newcastle. So that one maybe just a step too far there, but yeah, I think it's a little Parkinson one. I don't know. I watched that the other day in prep for this, and there is some sort of shuffle or movement towards the camera at the camera. So I don't try to push someone out the way or not. To your point, but yeah, it's great TV and getting games here. Ferguson, he doesn't do nothing as we said there, but he does huge amounts, and it's just enough to let something that was combusting combust quicker. I guess is how I would describe it.
So United need to lose at Middlesbrough. Newcastle, you need to beat Spurs. Neither happen. David May, of all the goals popping up with some crucial goals, gets the ball rolling. Paul Scholes gets subbed in the second half. It's still 1-0. And on comes Andy Cole. I think he scores with his first touch. And there's something poetic about that and how the final day of the previous season indeed. Newcastle go behind. They do get a goal back, but of course everything in vain. Ryan Giggs wraps it all up. United in the away strip, but in a blue and white one. And Keegan at the end again, schizophrenic really. Like worthy chat, they'll do England proud in the chat. Very complimentary, to hunt us down. That takes a lot. Ferguson and Keegan were on ITV for Euro 96, so kind of sharing that studio. So you always try friends, Kevin, and nice guys finished second, as they did here. Last minute, last day antics to briefly discuss David. Madrid, so Bolton down. Manchester City, Southampton, Coventry, all on the same points, all on 37 points. City's goal difference well worse off, so they need to better a score there. They're 2-0 down against Liverpool. They come back to 2-2. For reasons Steve Lomas thinks that 2-2 will do it. One of the other sides, Coventry or Southampton, indeed behind, and he just holds the ball in the corner flag with precious seconds slipping away, and City, most Manchester City thing of all at this time, happens, and they go down.
Two Manchester City were in the current one, but the one before it, this, I don't think we have the perspicacity to get a younger viewers who've only known Manchester City in the petrol era to get just how much of a joke they were, even to their own supporters. Incidentally, they traded on this as well. This could only happen to City, all that stuff, which becomes a self-fulfilling narrative, obviously, and disastrous things can happen to you because you just that they're going to. But this is bad. Someone's obviously told a reporter or an official has told Lomas, we just don't lose a goal and we're going to stay. And he's clearly then decided that he's going to go and play for that, which is perfectly sensible to do. It just isn't true. And as you say, Martyn, a good couple of minutes wasted in this fashion. Then there's a dramatic realisation among the rest of the team. And it's like somebody flicks a switch that, oh shit, we need another goal. And they then start hearing forward, but it's far too late. They don't have the time and they go down. It's one of the most bizarre endings to a game of football I have ever seen, because nothing changes in the other game. It's not like a draw does them, then it doesn't. It doesn't do them. And does.
Something from the crowd. It's, yeah, they get, as so often was the case, and especially in those days, they've been told by the crowd that beat, so 2-2 is fine. But oh dear. That does good with Uwe and Kinkladze and Nigel Clough. I mean, now Quinn had to go on to still have a good end to his career. Sunderland, obviously. Yep. Just wild kind of situation. Very quickly to wrap up, Alan Shearer should get his flowers very quick. 3 seasons in a row with 30 plus goals, the first since the 1930s, I think, in England's top flight, especially in a Blackburn team that were just done. He is a freak at this moment, and obviously his summer is going to be special too. FA Cup final, I think our friend Rob described it. It wasn't an expectation that this would be a club. It was an assumption between Manchester United and Liverpool. Liverpool side quite a decent record against United of late. Very good passing team. Clearly on their day, could be special. Roy Evans, I think, later reflected they just wasn't often. 1-0 in the end. Adam kind of reflected and distilled a lot of the old narratives. Cantona's control, Jesus, to just change his body at that stage of the game and score through a crowd of players to that redemption. Liverpool in their whites reinforcing the image that, and they did. They were party boys. I mean, they did to the bar as possible. They were shagging everything that moved, especially if they were a pop star. And it pissed a lot of United, it pissed a lot of Liverpool fans off in retrospect. But I mean, Keane was not impressed. And I think met them in one night and gave them quite a quick assessment of what Ferguson definitely noted the whites because his team talk was like, just play it around their area because they were waving up to Giorgio Armani at some point. Keane was superb. Him and Butt just stopped Liverpool. McManaman was Ferguson's big concern because he ended them really at 1992 at that day and lost that Vision title. All game, Keane sneers at that. No, it was not if you were playing. It was a proper contest, but he did his job that day. For all that Cantona lifts the trophy, Keane was everywhere.
Yeah, I think he got man of the match. He was, given the play. From this, I hate that setup. It just winds me up. Something awful. I know we spoke about it last week, but back three, Katir and Rob Jones as full. Steve McManaman is 10. John Barnes as a refashioned central midfielder. Now I'd on board with it. That saying it's the cause or anything, but there's a better combination within there. They've got attacking talent and they're putting them in weird situations. But that's not United. They are a team where everyone knows the role. They're playing perfect winning football. They've ground how many games again we spoke about Newcastle. Be failing to ground out enough. They did still have a fair number of 1-0s in this season, Newcastle, but United and Cantona finding things out, and as always, or as will certainly become, on them the platform and running up in a huge system for them and make sure that whatever happens, he's not going to be on the low side. And Can get the flowers for writers player of the year goals, and he'll go down in history. But don't underestimate Keane in this because he was everywhere.
Sure was, but we love enough David in this that rounded it off perfectly, didn't it?
It really did. The men in the ice cream suit, absolutely perfect. What better way than a representation that anyone can understand instantly between these two sides, and that's what it came to define. What the truth is, Manchester United was the better football team.
They were.
Liverpool. That simple. But they weren't great. So I'd maybe would jacket, but I would navy.
If you were in the Royal Box at Wimbledon, for example, then I think that's absolutely perfect, perfectly suitable attire. But it just fair, and I know Rob's written a lot about this in the past, about just they were more than that, but they weren't as professional as United. They weren't as hungry ultimately, and as just as focused. But yeah, one thing to take away from the team, and I still ask this question: there is no need to be choosing a team of the year in February, because there is only one Manchester United player in it, and it's Gary Neville. So just stop, please, for the love of God. I can do it surely in the last couple of weeks of the season now. Thank you, David.
Pleasure as always. Thank you, guys.
Cheers, Adam.
Bumper one this week, but we managed to just about get everything in. Thank you, and looking forward to 96 now.
Yeah, the summer of 1996 will be a wonderful time to be alive. Until next time, bye for now. If you enjoyed the show and want to help us grow, please remember to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. On YouTube, search for And It's Live Podcast. We've got new deep dives, drafts and breakdowns dropping every other day.